I just want to jump right into the Guardians of the Galaxy non-spoiler section. I want to start off by asking Sean, what did you think of this movie overall?
I mean, I quite loved it. I was very personally moved by it. I think it surpassed my expectations in a lot of ways. I was not, I know this is a divisive one, but I was not a Volume 2 guy. I think it was a
Hmm.
fine movie, but it just was a little bit rough in the pacing. And so he came back with a vengeance in this one. And, there's a little bit of a flaw here and there, but nothing that's really going to cancel out my enjoyment of this movie. I'd say the animal abuse scenes are just really tough to watch. But
Hmm.
after all that, it just really was a satisfying movie. I was really happy that it was a great conclusion to a trilogy as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think James Gunn came back with a vengeance on this particular picture. Connor, what did you think overall after watching this movie?
I thought it was very good. I saw it yesterday. I'd say that this series in the realm of the MCU has been one of the more consistent in Marvel and in superhero films in general. Partly because they've got that consistent vision from Gunn, and because I feel like they give him a little more creative freedom than with most Marvel directors, and so you can see more of his stamp here, and in particular with Volume 3, because I feel like he got to do whatever here.
Yeah, I have to go out and say it. I think out of the three of them, this might be the most emotional of the
Mhm.
trilogy, which
Oh,
I think
definitely.
really resonated with me in this particular installment. I had a blast with this movie, guys. I'm not gonna lie. I thought this was a fantastic movie on all fronts. I do like Sean said earlier. There's a couple flaws. Maybe you can hyper nitpick, but overall, this is a really well paced, well acted. I thought the story worked. I loved the bad guy in the movie, which the other Guardians had a little bit of difficulty with their villains. I thought this one was
Yeah,
fantastic.
yeah. High Revolutionary was definitely a more memorable villain in this case. Although Peter's dad in Guardians 2 was pr- pretty memorable, I will say, but I feel like the High Revolutionary, like he worked and was certainly a menacing antagonist with his motivations, especially with the flashbacks to the experiments done on Rocket.
Yeah, definitely. Sean, what did you think of the villain in this movie?
I mean, it's just refreshing to have a villain that you finally don't side with in a Marvel movie. I mean, we
Yeah,
argue that like Thanos or
Thanos
Killmonger, it's
was
like, hey, we
right.
got, yeah, Thanos was right. Like, Killmonger, like, he's got a point. He's doing it wrong, but he's got a point. And this guy was just an absolute horrible person that you were just rooting to be killed the entire time. It was just like the most satisfying thing is to just, and it wasn't even one note because he was a full bodied villain, but there was just no complication to him. And I loved that. And I'm a big Oscar guy, and let's get a makeup Oscar for the good old Guardians this time because my goodness, I did not realize that was all practical effects on that villain, and the fact that it is, that's just stunning work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to say too, the performance from the actor was really
Mm-hmm.
landing for me. I know it's one of those that it really goes out there with, his characterization. The guy's a total asshole in this movie. And like I don't think they wanted to give him like a ton of backstory because you don't want to like this guy, not even a little bit, because of some of the things he does in this movie. I want to go into this actually because since we're talking about the villain, let's talk about the hero. Chris Pratt playing Peter Quill steps up to plate once again. I thought he was awesome in this movie.
Yeah, even though it feels like he was kind of a at least somewhat of a supporting player in this one, because with with the Guardians, I feel like each of them kind of get to shine in their own ways. Particularly, I feel like Mantis actually got a bigger role as well as Drax, and I'm guessing that's a bit of carryover from the holiday special in which they were both the ostensibly the comic relief of the series, but they're getting bigger roles lately, and I mean like that is a blessing because I we all like both of these characters and they're very funny in it. But I guess like one issue is that like the whole shtick does get just a little tired.
I really loved that all of these like characters did kind of get their own conclusion, their own solid arc. There wasn't a character that I felt was tossed aside of the ones that we've seen for 2 to 3 movies, and I thought that was the most impressive. Sure, there's a couple of there's a Cosmo dog that is more for just fun.
Yeah, Groot's not really utilized too much here, although he does get a few cool things to do. And one minor issue that I did have was I feel like they could have handled the Gamora coming back a little better. And even though to begin with I was pretty skeptical of that because she got such an emotional final moment in Endgame, so I felt like bringing it back was kind of unnecessary, but also at the same time it does serve the purpose to set up more of the multiverse. So I'm guessing that's why they include her.
I thought Gunn handled Gamora the best way he could, considering the complicated storyline after Endgame. And I have to say, they do mention how that whole situation is now infecting Volume 3, and I don't know. I appreciated it not going on a huge tangent the whole time. Speaking about what happened in Endgame.
Yeah, it was kind of more in the background, and this was one of the few Marvel films in a while that felt kind of self-contained, which can be an issue for some audience members who are expecting yet another multiverse storyline, another thing to get set up for later installments, later shows. But I was fine with it here.
Yeah, speaking from an audience member that's getting a little bit exhausted by the connections, I've been a defender of Marvel for a very long time, through the majority of Phase 4, and I'm just now starting to get a little fatigued by it. So this movie came just in time. I think Gamora was an interesting addition, where that was one of my flaws, where I feel like she, had to come back into the group, and I feel like that happened a little bit easily. I feel like it was a little bit inconsistent. But I still like the fact that it was a different Gamora, and there was a different storyline there, and they paid heed to that. They didn't cheapen that, which I thought was a very interesting move.
We know right off the bat that this is a completely different person than we saw in the first 2 pictures.
Yeah, and I think too, just on the topic of juggling the whole other plot points of the MCU, I thought this movie did better than a lot of recent installments, including Wakanda Forever, which was just inserting random storylines to get a Disney Plus show.
Ironheart and
I appreciated
that
this one
Freeman
does have some setups, which we'll talk about in the spoiler section.
Yeah.
But I thought for the most part it wasn't getting distracted by the core plot of the movie.
No, it still stayed pretty focused on the Guardians' particular story, and especially Rocket's.
Yes.
Which is the emotional centerpiece of the story. And as mentioned before, this is the part of the film that will give you the feels. You are worried sick for Rocket because, first of all, a lot of this is happening because towards the beginning of the film, Rocket gets severely injured and is basically on ventilation most of the movie. And so we get a bit more backstory on Rocket as a character, and his particularly, to some audience members, I will give a warning, a pretty disturbing backstory. This might be one of the darker MCU films.
Yeah, I have to agree with that point. What do you think, Sean? What did you think of that portion of the story?
It was strongly emotionally manipulative. It was strongly emotionally manipulative, but consider me manipulated. It worked. It hit hard. There's a moment where there's a woodland creature that looks up and says, "What color is the sky?" And I'm like, okay, I know what you're doing. And it's working, but still.
It works so hard on me.
It was very effective.
I'm not even a huge animal guy, to be honest. I don't even plan on getting a pet anytime soon. And I was emotionally moved by some of the stuff I was watching.
Yeah, I've heard criticisms of this film as well, that the animal cruelty shown in the film as the High Evolutionary does experiments on these woodland creatures, including Rocket. It's not that it's too graphic, but it's upsetting.
Yeah.
Definitely upsetting.
If anyone has issues with animal cruelty and watching it on screen, this is a tough watch, just to be completely blunt with you.
I have a small little dog named Scooter, and I held him close when I got home. I was just like, "Oh, buddy, like you're okay."
Yeah, but on that
Same with my
same
cat.
note, though, considering if somebody's favorite character of the Guardians is Rocket,
Mhm.
this is potentially gonna be your favorite Guardians
Oh,
out
yeah.
of the lot.
Yeah, he's my favorite, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Wow, so I'm interested to see where your rankings go, Connor. But kind of pivoting, do you guys have anything more you'd like to say about the non-spoiler review of this movie?
A few things. I did. First of all, I felt like it was very refreshing that because we did see Quantumania and Eternals and how much worse some of the special effects have gotten in Marvel films, and I have some feelings about their treatment of special effects artists. But for some reason here, it didn't feel like the effects were either incomplete or rushed or like they looked so much better than they had been lately. And I'm guessing part of it is that James Gunn is a little more willing to use practical effects than most other Marvel directors. You see the makeup on some of the creatures, but there's a good balance of that with the mocap, as well as it seems like they took more care of this one overall.
Yeah. I mean, like one of the things I think about is I can forgive bad effects if you have very stirring and very suspenseful action. Like, I mean, it's an overwhelming amount of CGI in that old boy hallway fight scene, but it's very well done. It's very well choreographed. And so, and the CGI isn't even that bad still, but it's like, even if it was, I'm entertained. And I'm basically watching an animated movie, which I'm okay with doing in that situation. I really am. But like, I loved the world that Gunn put us in. I mean, that living planet was just such an imaginative way to do it. This production design is just so much better than, filming in the volume, which is getting tiring now. And so they got to really cut the volume stuff out.
Yeah. And it also feels like there were some parts where they did film on real sets and locations, whereas, like, contrast that with Quantumania, which was all green screen. And that's a bit of the bad taste that Quantumania has kind of left in the mouths of a lot of, like, critics and Marvel fans and audiences in general, is still a little present, but along with the constant barrage of the Disney Plus series, and that's kind of adding up to a bit of uncertainty about Marvel, which after watching Quantumania and not really caring for it, I felt kind of similarly jaded. But I feel like in that respect, Guardians Volume 3 was a return to form. Yeah. I felt like I was going to watch a phase 2 or 3 movie again.
Yeah, and I think that's to Gunn's credit, to be honest, because I don't think there's a single one of these Guardians where I thought even the effects were just like completely trash looking, which, it's tough with these kind of worlds he's building in these movies because, as people know from the trailers, this one gets pretty wacky at points. I would say out of in terms of trippy Guardian movies, this might be up there as the most trippy. What do you guys think that, or are you on a different page?
I would say it did. I mean, like I'm going to call it out again, that living planet, like, besides the animal cruelty stuff, that's the stuff that kept me up at night. That was just like this, from the sound to like the concept of that, it just really was freaky. And so I think that just that alone, and that was even this deviation that ended up not even mattering because they still couldn't get the kill switch code and we had to go follow the guy somewhere else, which I was okay with that diversion because it was still a fun, adventurous time where they spent time with each other. But like they did that just to like really almost show off, which was quite brilliant in a cinematic way.
Yeah, and also some of that surrealism also goes into some of the humor compared to the other Guardians films. Here, it's a little more like silly absurdist more than comic relief, because I mean Mantis does make a guy dance. That was pretty amusing to watch. Although I don't know if the humor completely worked as well as in other films in the series, though. I feel like that's kind of an issue that at least I'm having with a lot of Marvel films lately, is that sometimes sometimes, not that many times in this film, but like only a couple times, some of the jokes do interrupt emotional scenes.
I think they had to
Yeah.
find that balance, which was very tricky because you
Yeah, it
can't really
was.
cut to like a Goofy Drax moment after watching Rocket
Yeah.
get abused, and so they really
Yeah.
had to like do a little bit of padding between each scene. I think.
So you go from
I think, yeah, this one definitely had a different type of style when it came to the humor. But with how dark this movie is, I think they had to go that route of just not sort of slapstick comedy that they were doing in the first couple movies. Maybe you can argue Volume 2, it gets a little darker with some of the plot points, but I think this one definitely is a little bit more absurdist, cut to the point comedy that I liked.
and I mean, for Christ's sake, this film has the first Marvel
That was
F-bomb.
big.
PG-13 F-bomb. Peter Quill be like, open the fucking door!
How pissed was Samuel L. Jackson where he's like, I wanted to let out one motherfucker and you guys
Yes.
wouldn't let me do it, and then James Gunn lets that happen. It's unbelievable. Like he was dying for that one motherfucker and he gets dusted instead, and then he's got to be pissed.
I keep thinking of the one post-credit scene where he ends up in the blippy, he's like, mother...
Yeah, like that's what I mean. He was just like, I
then
wanted to
there's
get
the
it. I
Captain
wanted to get
Marvel
it.
setup.
Nope, still couldn't get it.
Yeah, I thought this, like, just to like kind of put a cap on this non-spoiler view, this is a great time in the theater, and I already am gonna predict this. It's gonna break some records of some sort because
Yeah,
I
hope
went
so.
to the theater today. I'm visiting some friends in New York, and not a single seat was open. So
Yeah.
this is a great time, guys.
I think
to
word of
be
mouth
straight
is
up.
going to help this one as well, because I think that what people have been sour about Marvel for a little bit, and I think
Yeah.
people are going to say, no, this one's good. Maybe the next few won't be, but this one was solid, and I check this one out, enjoy this one.
Yeah, this is definitely one of the best Marvel films. I'd say definitely the best since No Way Home.
Yeah,
I'd
say.
agree. I'd agree with that.
agree. Yeah.